Dave, I have a question for you today.
Hmm.
Where have all the good Subaru companies gone? Now,
Hmm.
I know that this is something that is always highly debated, and we are now in our online era of being able to buy parts from across the world, buy parts from multiple different companies. People are making the same parts. But remember the time when we used to be able to stick with two or three companies to build your whole Subaru? Like it was
Mhm.
like you could stick with Cobb, you could stick with ProDrive, you could stick with, if you needed something, Subi Mods had APS and all of these other companies out there. And
To like
I
Gretty,
think
that kind of like level of,
ready. And so that's kind of where I want to start today is I want to talk about where
mhm.
these companies went and why they kind of folded. Something that I've been thinking a lot about is I've talked about it before, but these older O2 bug eyes, they all had Momo steering wheels. It was a great steering wheel. People loved it. It
Classic.
gave a little bit of that racing feel to the car, and never again, right? We went for comfort. We went for buttons on the steering wheel that actually control things in the car. We went for things that look a little bit more closer to a track steering wheel with the different grips and the leather and the different colors. And, I
Mhm.
believe that we went to a cheaper product while giving the customers more. And I think
Yeah.
that you notice it, right? You notice it when you get in a Subaru and you hold a Momo wheel and you know that this thing feels solid. The leather feels tough. It feels like this is a wheel that I could rip on the road.
The word that comes to mind is it felt like it had pedigree,
Yeah.
which it did.
And now we've got these parts that when you put them on, you already get that feeling like I'm going to have to fix this. I'm going to have to replace this. If I use this too hard or too much, this is going to break. And I hate that feeling. It's not something that I like to think about when I'm buying parts, especially thinking about when we used to spend good money on good stuff. I mean, this is why,
Yeah.
our Super Mechanics group, we only partner with good companies that make good products. And, I think that it's where we start to fall apart is that the internet has kind of made these things cheaper and has just kind of lost quality. So I
Cheaper,
want to take
faster.
this, yeah. So we're all going to buckle in. We're going in the Wayback Machine. We're going to go back and, we've done some research. I pulled up Subimod's website from 2006. I've gone back and looked at some other websites that have, sourced Subaru parts back in the early 2000s. We've gotten a list together. And one name that I kept seeing come up, especially in Naziok posts, was called Vishnu Performance Systems, VPS. They were around that, their peak era was from 2001 to 2006. In that time, they were famous for doing stage 0 and stage 1 Subaru kits, ECU
Mhm.
maps, water injection kits, pulley kits, exhaust pieces. Um,
Pretty extreme stuff for the time.
yeah, and what we find is that these companies, a lot of these things were experimental, right? 2001, I mean, you're talking about the GC8s come out and we're starting to work into turbo kits and, all of these things that existed in Japan, but the US is figuring it out and we're just trying to make these things work. And so the number one thing that I was reading was that Vishnu was great for engineering. They were using, the community to test their products and like really get them nailed in. But what they were finding was that they were extremely technical. You had to do a ton of reading. Their website was just a slog with everything written up and what you had to know.
Mhm.
you know, People obviously were blaming the parts or the install or whatever. Um, and so they started to fall off. They were very conservative because they didn't want to blow people's stuff up. So I think that you run into this issue a lot where you have companies where they make a good product, but they're not scaling the business. They're not bolt on, which you and I talked about is like Subarus are very bolt on. People like having a couple pieces that they can put on and the car is going to make X power and they know that this is not like I need to know all of these things to be able to drive this car.
Yeah. If you don't have to jack the car up or get it on a lift or need special equipment, those parts generally sell first and fastest.
Yeah, and owner education being required is now phasing people out of these cars. And I actually think that where people think that we want to go to electric cars because they're safer or because they're, better for the world. And I feel like a lot of it is just they don't want to think about it. They don't want to think about what goes into these cars. They want to get in, get where they're going, get out. They don't want to do the
Hmm.
maintenance. They don't care about oil. They don't care about how the car's running. They just want to be like, okay, there's a problem. I'm going to go to Tesla. They're going to take care of it because it's
Hmm.
electrical and it's above everybody's pay grade. And I couldn't even start to figure it out. So I have to bring it somewhere and just have them deal with it. And so these brands back then were just so focused on like, how cool can we make this? What can we make? How is this going to come together?
They were real innovators in a lot of ways. They were pioneers.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like I think that's the word I would use, pioneers. When you're a pioneer, you don't always get the accolades or the fruits of your labor. You kick off a movement and it doesn't, come to fruition, and it's always challenging when you're in a startup scenario to just to make ends meet. I'm not saying every company expects to, be the next Fortune 500 company,
Yeah.
which a lot of companies aspire not to be. I think from a
Yeah.
small company standpoint. But to that point, that when you put companies in a situation where, yeah, like you said, they have to explain things to people and people have to be informed consumers and understand, and I guess put in the work, and the time to understand that you are modifying a car, and I think that anytime you decide to modify a car, you have to undertake the responsibility of understanding that things can, and the famous second part, which is will go wrong, and you have to be ready for that.
Yeah. Somebody who I feel like really understands that and has found a way to survive in some form is Turbo XS. Turbo XS has been around forever. I mean, they peaked in Subaru fame around 2002 to 2008. And they were just known for their piggyback ECUs. They were known for their turbo back exhausts, mounted intercooler kits, manual boost controllers. They just had a wide variety. I'm sure everybody knows Turbo XS has just essentially become a blow off valve company. That's what they're really most known for now. And back in the
But they
day,
have competition from the likes of Tile.
well, that's the thing. There is a competition. And something that we keep talking about is back then, right? There wasn't too many companies that were doing these things. And now there's all these companies that have figured it out. And now there's a billion different options. You can get anything. And, obviously Turbo XS is not the only option. And especially on things that make noise that you have a certain tone that you want. Oh my God. There we go.
There you go.
When there's a certain tone that you want out of your car, you're gonna shop around. I can tell you, I've worked in performance and with as exhaust goes, I
Mhm.
can't tell you how long it takes somebody to decide on an exhaust system. And even if they have 15 different options, they're still looking for that one company that's like a two-man operation out of Minnesota that made this one exhaust that you heard one time and sounded good. And now they want that one. And it's like,
It was bespoke.
yeah, it's true. I've seen it so many times, and it's like with Turbo XS, right? They got really big. People like the sound of them or whatever. But then all of a sudden, here comes this new company making a different noise. It's like, wow, that one's way different. I want that. And then people start to pull out.
New kid on the block.
Yeah. And something that happened with Turbo XS that was very big was that in the UTech threads on Nasiok, it was mandatory reading to figure out the piggyback ECUs and to figure out their manual boost controllers and how you were going to make them work with the car. But then people learned timing and they learned the knock system and they learned that, not reading had consequences and that their cars would blow up
Amen.
if they didn't do the right research and put things together the right way. So a lot of Subaru owners back then cut their teeth on these parts from Turbo XS, and they learned the hard way how to do proper upgrades. And then all of a sudden, by the time people figured it out, flash tuning made the piggybacks obsolete. Nobody cared about that anymore. New owners didn't want complexity, so they didn't really care for reading, and they just found a company that was doing it easier. And
Hmm.
too many
Plug
blown
and play option.
motors. Yeah, and then too many blown motors that were blamed on the product instead of misuse. So that is another thing that kills these companies, especially the ones from back then, is that everybody that was a hardcore Subaru guy that was on the ASIAC, they would tell you, they would be like, you have to read this. There is no other option. You have to read this, and you need to understand how this works to
And
make this
understand
function.
it. Yes. You need to actually
And
digest it.
and if you're not going to go through a tuner, or if you aren't going to go through, an install shop that specializes in Subaru like you, right? Then you need to do the research. And, what always happens is they just end up blaming the company and ends up causing problems for the
Hmm.
company. And we just talked with Overtake about all of these things. And Overtake was saying that the number one thing that they have the most complaints about, or did when they were at Grimspeed, was that it was the AOS kits that they made. And it's because they're complex, they're hard to put together. You have to do the reading, you have to do the research, you have to know how to put it in. And if you don't do it right, you're going to have problems. And right off the bat, that was the first thing they said, was that it was complex and people didn't know how to do it and they didn't want to know. And it was just, it is what it is.
I feel like to their point, just because it's a product that's been out from a time standpoint longer, is the IAG AOS. I wonder if you could pull, do it now, but the numbers on how many searches are for, hey, I bought this Cobb AOS used, how do I hook this up? And
Yeah.
it's like there's so many questions about it, or the IAG one. And it's like, because people aren't willing to put in really the time. They basically want someone to show them. They're expecting a 1 minute reel about this hose here, 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 and skip all the other hard stuff about, hey, there's a trick to get this hose off here before you put
Yeah.
this hose on there. But we won't show you that.
Yeah.
That would take too long for a 1 minute reel. That would take the whole minute to show you how to get this hose off. And that's not entertainment.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to be really cognizant of, there's entertainment value. I mean, we made a post recently for anyone who's in the group, obviously, that was just more of a tease, and it was all in good fun, just kind of just having fun with everybody and just saying, hey, some days, scrolling the group, it's nice to just see one thing that's not a question as much, it's just more of just kind of having fun a little bit. So for anyone who took that to heart, we apologize if you took that seriously about the Harbor Freight thing or the I8 tools. We were just trying to just have fun with it and just say, hey, everyone have a great day, But I think that's the bigger takeaway, is that we have to be cognizant of, what our overall directive is.
Yeah. Something that I was talking to a customer about today was just that YouTube is like such a double-edged sword, because like something that we find with our mechanics now is like they are not retaining how to fix these cars because they're not actually looking at the car and processing how to fix the problem. They are looking at the car and saying, I need to replace this thing. And then they go to YouTube and they watch a video, and as they're doing it, they're hitting play and it says, do this. They go over, they do that. They come back, they hit play. Okay, do that. Come back, do that. It's like, it's so mindless. And like, I feel like that's how a lot of people are installing parts on their own now, is that they have YouTube as this option. And for the right people, right, it's a wealth of knowledge. If you listen to
Agreed.
these videos and you want to understand it, right, it's great. It is great because it is going to show you and it's going to explain the different ways to do things. You could hear from a guy in, Canada that's working on some Subaru, and he's like, I found the right way to do this and the easy way, and it's going to save you time. Awesome. But then you can also find somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, and or they don't tell you that they're working on, a two-wheel drive car instead of a four-wheel, and now it's a different process, and now you got a kid who's wasting all this time trying to do something and it's not right.
Yeah.
So I think that in the realm of like these older parts and these older companies, like that's the other thing. Everybody was doing their research. Everybody at the time was using Naziok to try to get as much info as possible because you needed it. And now it's you don't need it because there's people that are spoon feeding it, you know? But then the
Well, and I
problem
think
is
that
like,
this group's really important to say the least because people have that added benefit that they can come here when the YouTube, you know, isn't answering their questions and we can come in and say, hey, we have, you know, such a great shout out to a lot of the great, you know, top contributors in our group who are really, really knowledgeable, you know, that
yeah,
are providing really, really concrete, informative information, the right things, the right steps, the right approaches, you know, not just, hey, replace this part, try this, try that, which
yeah,
we've made our voice very clear on just throwing the parts cannon at things is not the way to fix things. You know, I think that if, you know, we have this wealth of knowledge at our disposal. We have to be cognizant of how we utilize and use it.
yeah. And something else that was nice that happened over the weekend was that we have the Subaru Mechanics Discord. And for the people that use it, they love it. Because when you look at the group, right? The group is one big just everything all at once all the time. And is it great because a lot of you get a lot of eyes on your stuff and you're able to get that? Yeah, it's awesome. Something that the Discord does a little bit better is that it actually lets you write your own you're able to like write your own forum basically for your posts. You can make a post and then it'll literally be under that tag. You know, you could put it under engine or under turbo problems or whatever. And then you have your own thread that people can respond to. And it's kind of like the Facebook group, but the difference is that it's all broken up into sections. So it's very easy to locate that stuff and work through it. But I like what you're saying about the group is that it's true. People in the group, I love this group because people ask questions, they get a response and they have to think about it and they have to make changes and they have to get as much info as they can and figure out the problem. And I think that it
They
just
have to
makes
adapt the way they're thinking.
yeah. Sorry, I don't want to go too off topic. Another company that kind of plays into this whole thing is MRT Performance.
Man,
MRT Performance was peak for Subaru in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Their Subaru division is gone at this point, I mean, effectively. But in the early 2000s, they had early ECU reflashes, turbo upgrades, intake designs that respected MAF scaling. They had rally tested suspension kits that they were in Australia with a US arm of the company and they were doing all of this stuff that people wanted on Subarus, but they were testing it in Australia on the rally tracks. And so you knew that you were getting these like rally tested products. Naziok really respected MRT because they had a rally pedigree. They had conservative power curves. They focused on longevity builds and not just pop bang. I want a car to go rip in the parking lot, you know?
hmm
But, something that kind of caused their disappearance is that they had an Australian business model that basically couldn't compete with the US based flash tuning and they were too expensive for the mass market. So, the problem is in the Australian market, right? They have a little bit more that they can do, but in their US arm, they're making the products, they're shipping them, they're paying the tariffs and everything, and it just ended up being too much. And that's the other part of it is again something that we always talk about, the cheaper the better, right? That's what everybody's mentality is, the cheaper the better. If I can get this kind of power and build my whole Subaru for 3 grand versus 6 grand, great. I don't care if it's a shitty
Race to the
product,
bottom.
and it's like it's crazy that that's how it's gone. Something that I saw today TikTok that made me kind of upset was that it was this girl saying that companies nowadays have this feeling that they're upset that they have to go through you to get your money. They, com-
Hmm.
companies are treating people like you're the problem. Like they're mad that they have to go through you and deal with you to get to your wallet. And that's what the difference is between then and now. Is you have these companies that are making all of these products and they are competing within each other and they're just mad that they have to go through you to get your money because you are the customer that has all the options. You're checking the reviews. They're mad that you can see the reviews. They're mad that you can talk to people about their products and see if it's good or bad, because at the end of the day, they just want you to see the product and buy it. Another company that I found was Scooby Sport. Have you ever heard of them?
The name sounds familiar.
So the original company is defunct. It's from 2000 to 2006 was like their peak Subaru era. Ian
Okay.
Robertson was the founder of it. He's now deceased. And basically it was known for axle back and turbo back exhaust systems, signature boxer sound, thick wall stainless construction. You know, just one of these companies that made a really good exhaust, and they just did it really well. And that's what they did. You know, they had a good Nasioc reputation. They were quoted on Nasioc saying, if you want the best tone, this is it. And the reason that this company kind of vanished off the face of the earth is that after the founder passed away, the ownership changed, diluted the brand, and the noise and emissions regulations tightened, and basically people started to go different directions. And there are a million exhaust companies out there now. It's funny that companies like this, they really focus on the quality of things, and you know, like you're saying, shipping's never been cheaper. The Nvidia, I'm sure, ships a ton of their stuff from China now, or you know, from overseas, or like, you know,
They make it cheap. They sell it cheap.
it is what
They
it
ship it
is,
cheap.
right?
I'll
It's a
say it.
game. They won the game, you know?
Hmm.
Why would you battle head to head with somebody when you could just go
They
around them,
won the race to
you
the
know?
bottom.
Yeah. So, you know, it's the same thing with if you've ever heard of Andy's Autosport. So, Andy's has been around forever, and just recently it changed hands. It's got a new owner. This guy Staz, who has reached out to me, and we were talking a little bit. And this is one of those instances where it's a company that was kind of falling off the map, and the owner didn't really want to own it anymore. And like, you know, they were so big for so long, and they're just super well known from the early 2000 days and Nasioc and people that were getting parts from them. And now this guy who worked as a mechanic there for a long time, or you know, he worked as part of the team, he has, you know, he never had a plan to, but he basically loves the company so much after working there for so long that he has chosen to buy it and essentially run it. And he's now taking over their huge YouTube channel. He's trying to turn things around and make product, you know. And from the conversation I had with him, it really sounds like his heart is in it and he really wants to make it a really great company. And so those are the times, right, where ownership change doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go in the direction of like, we need to make money, so let's just make things cheaper and give people what they want. Like, he's really trying to make the quality come back and get the customers that wanted that quality to begin with, which I think is a cool take on that, and something that I'm
Yeah.
sure everybody listening is going to eventually have to use Andy's Autosport for something, because again, he's trying to bring back the quality to auto parts. So just something to keep in mind. But
It's like you said, a lot of our sponsors are doing the same thing.
yeah.
They're on the forefront of really being on the in the community.
Yeah. Just a note too. I don't if anybody has any connections out there, but I emailed Scooby Sport to attempt to get them on the podcast and talk with them a little bit, because I found their company really interesting, because they made a, I guess they're, one of the things that they were saying a lot, like their tagline was that they were sound tuning, not horsepower. So like they were really like, what sound do you want out of your exhaust? Let's get that sound. You know, let's help people get their car to sound the way that they wanted to. And so they weren't so focused on like hitting big numbers as they were just like trying to give people what they want, which I thought was cool. Now, a company that everybody knows is ProDrive. ProDrive was huge in the 90s and the 2000s. Subaru specific parts, axle back exhaust, springs, wheels, ECU calibrations, rally, everything rally. You know, they were pretty much untouchable. It was Subaru's WRC arm selling street parts. And on Nasioc, they were huge for OEM plus, rarely criticized, always expensive. People knew what they were getting. But ProDrive has started to, well, not even started. They've pretty much disappeared from the Subaru scene. They were just too conservative for modern buyers. So they were very much like, if we're going to make a street product, we're not going to make it crazy. Low profit margins led to them basically losing on a lot of products. And Subaru shifting their global strategy took away their chance to innovate and their chance to test products. You think about it, STI has essentially been behind all of these big Subaru projects and their race cars, Project Midnight. ProDrive is no longer being used for these projects, and so they're no longer testing products and they're no longer innovating. Like, the point that I made here was that ProDrive didn't fail. It's more the market moved and things have changed. And I think that as a
Yeah.
company, like they've made really cool things, but those things are no longer relevant. Now, not going to say that I don't love ProDrive headlights on a bug guy. Not going to say I don't love ProDrive parts because I think that they make an incredible assortment of shit. So,
They made some exceptional products. Like
yeah,
they were sought after. I think is an understatement to say that people aspired to have
yeah.
something pro drive.
And
You
they
know,
made cool memorabilia too. I've seen a lot of ProDrive like watches and stuff online on like eBay
don't
and
even get
stuff.
me
And
started. Don't even get
yeah,
me started. I'm a watch guy, dude.
I've seen
Don't
the
even get
hats
me
on
started.
eBay. ProDrive makes some cool stuff for sure.
But I think that also kind of brings up another kind of point that was brought up to me about from a company standpoint about as we're talking about innovation and real true investment with a culture, which is what we are, enthusiasts. I think that's a broad spectrum to say the least, but I think it encompasses what it doesn't matter if you're off road. It doesn't matter if you're, a rally driver. It doesn't matter if you're time attack. It really doesn't matter that we're all enthusiasts. And, what we have to remind ourselves is from a broader spectrum here, and I don't want to mean to blow it up, but at the same time, I think that we owe it to companies that are true enthusiast companies at their core. They're owned by enthusiasts. They're run by enthusiasts. They're employed by enthusiasts. And these are the people that are directly in our communities. A lot of times it's us. I mean, if you have the option as a motorsport enthusiast to take a job at some mind numbing corporate 500 company, just crunching numbers versus work for a motorsport fucking company, I think it's safe to say that we would all jump at the chance to work for, ProDrive, back in the day. And the problem is we're seeing as we're discussing more and more the dwindling of these companies. And I think the bigger point is that we need to be cognizant that if we relinquish the control and the innovation, rather, that's a big word, but it's both, of our industry as enthusiasts over to a race to the bottom. I'll state the obvious. I don't think we're going to like where we're gonna end up. And I think that I'll say the unpopular or the obvious that I'll be the first to leave. Sorry, not saying leave, but I'll do my own thing as the old kind of loners approach. But I feel like where we're heading is, and a good example I can surmise, and no sponsorship here but ties, but from a example, let's say you have a premium diodynamic option of light that says it's $100, and you have another competitor that's $20. Well, the $20 one's going to sell, I'll just tell you, in this landscape, unfortunately, more. And that's the uphill battle that we're facing, because I don't think people accredit the value of companies that are truly invested in the community that they serve, and they're directly listening to what we have to say. Because as automotive enthusiasts that want to modify our cars and do anything, we look at it and we say, hey, man, everyone has the same product. And let's just say, as an example, from a light, oh, I wish it did this, or I wish it had this. I hate the way they do this, but we all just kind of accept it.
Yeah.
It's the companies that are directly committed to and built and comprised of the community that is us that are the innovators. And
Yeah.
if we want to relinquish the control of innovation to a race to the bottom, I'm really scared.
Yeah. I mean, it's inevitable, right? Like it's the way that things have always moved, unfortunately. And it feels like it's inevitable, right? I really am hoping that things start to turn around. And like, unfortunately, I feel like the only way for things to turn around is either for the community to revolt, right? Let me put it this way, right? This is what's crazy to me. If every single person turned on bad companies the way that they have turned on AI, it would be just world changing because people know what AI slop is now. They know when they see something that they don't like because it's poor quality. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen these people like absolutely lose their minds over AI. And it's like,
People buy from it. That's the other difference, though. They buy enough from it, scammers, that unfortunately it's still lucrative. It makes sense. They wouldn't do it if it wasn't making money. I mean, famously,
but that's
that's
the
the
thing. It's
scary
like,
reality.
we're in a
We have to
world
revolt,
now.
like you said. Viva la revolution! We have to reach. We have to speak out. We have to
Yeah.
fight back as a community of enthusiasts and say we will not allow the race to the bottom and a lack of investment in our community. You know, there are companies that are putting on events, putting on shows that really care about it, and sometimes losing money equivocally, but simply put to show that they care about their community.
You want to know something crazy? Talking about products. My work, right? We have, our office, we have some like really high tech gaming computers for like our office computers with like the keyboards and, big monitors and everything. And then our techs have like whatever, Chromebooks or whatever they use. And so all the techs wanted new keyboards. So I put in for these really nice gaming keyboards. They had a lot of cool features on them. I'm not going to put the company out there, but let me put it this way. We're talking like 150 to like $200 keyboards. And I bought five.
Really high quality.
Yeah. So,
That's the key
high,
metric here.
high ratings, everything. I bought five of them, right? Well, one of the features on them is that they have a little scroll on the corner of the keyboard that, you can click it to pause or you can scroll it to change the volume. Within a week or two of using it, my service advisor, it stopped working, the scroll feature. So I reached out to the company and I wrote them this nice letter and I said, listen, I said, I bought this 2 weeks ago. I said, I have five of your keyboards I just bought. I said, I'm telling you, I've done the resets. I've tried unplugging it. I went through your website and did any firmware updates it needed. I did everything. I've tried it all. I've tried different computers. It doesn't work.
Can you
The
help me?
guy, so the guy's first response was, have you tried unplugging it and have you tried a different computer? And I'm like, I bought five keyboards from you.
I know what
Five.
I'm doing.
Like, not like, regardless, right? Read the fucking email. Read the email. I am one of your customers that has bought five of your products, one of your most expensive products. Like, I don't even know how you could respond to me and not read a thing I said. And then
You realize it was AI?
no. And then after I emailed the guy back and I was like, yes, everything that you just said, I said, if you read the email, you would know that I've already done. So then he responds back to me and he asks me two more things to try that were in the original email. And I'm just like, am I losing my mind? So then I finally reach out and I'm like, I am telling you that there is not a single effing thing on this planet that will make this scroll work. I have tried it all. There's nothing else. I know what I'm doing. And then he finally was like, all right, we're just gonna process it and you need to show me your original receipt and like whatever. And like we gotta go through the whole process. So like whatever, it is what it is, right? But like it should be easy for me to go through that process with a good we're talking about this is a good company that makes good products and I'm dealing with this shit. Like
Unacceptable.
these bad companies just don't even care. Like it's just like it's mind-boggling how much time you have to waste to just like if I was a company and I got an email saying that somebody bought five of our most,
Yeah.
expensive keyboards and there's a problem with one of them, I would be like, fix it. Fix it now. No problem. Send it back. I'm sure you've already tried. No big deal. It's just like crazy. I just don't even understand why they would go this route. So before I pop a blood vessel, so like part of what we're talking about with these companies is just the fact that like obviously some of them have gone away for reasons like that. They're not willing to take care of their customers. They're not willing to make a good product. They're not willing to innovate and keep up with the current models of Subarus. There's just a lot of pieces like that. So,
Some are
Another
just ahead of their time.
Yeah. So something that I found interesting in my research, another company that came up that fails in a different way is Sims Racing, SYS. They have been around since the early 2000s and they still exist, but they're effectively irrelevant outside of Japan. I'm just going to show their website here. This is their website from Japan, so you guys have an idea. So, of course, they've got the Lavore on their, on their main screen. They got their cool logo. That's, stuff like that. They've got WRX stuff. They just have some cool products that they put out.
You're just teasing me now with the Lavore. Damn it.
Yeah, it's cool. They got cool stuff. Um, so this company, right? They make cool parts and pieces. Um, what I found in my research on them is that they're mostly known in Japan for intake systems, exhausts, ECU tuning, suspension. As far as Nasiak goes, their parts were just considered rare, extremely expensive. JDM Elite is what they were called. These are like the parts to get. But the problem is that they limited global distribution. They didn't want to ship a lot of these to the US or deal with the US. The price versus performance gap started to widen. Um, so, people were getting more performance out of cheaper stuff. And the US market caught up technically. The US market just caught up so fast to what the Japanese companies were doing. People going over there and seeing what they're working on, testing their products there, and then coming back and making them. And so it just kind of turned a page on that. And I think that has made a big difference. These companies make really good products, but they've been caught up to in a lot of areas. And the US is one of those places that really, once they get their claws into something, they can make anything. So, it's like, why, again, like, it's pretty easy to see, like, why would you buy like top of the line struts from Japan when you could just get them in the US and they'll be relatively close? Why would you want to get an exhaust system from Japan and pay all the shipping? And like, even though it's a really quality system, they got their own
I
charge pipes. Like, it's cool because you would have a one off, like something that I'm sure nobody else could get or would want to try to get. But like, these are just pieces
Well, and
that,
maybe that's the bigger take to it. Like in the global market, that like you said, in the early days in the 90s, 2000s of modifying cars, we had handfuls of brands.
yeah,
Now we have hundreds, and so I guess maybe you could say it's a little bit easier to be unique in some capacity, because if everyone's just building from the same three brands, well, everyone has the same car almost. With 100 different brand options, you have a lot more configurations to some capacity.
yeah,
Not saying that that's the answer of having 100 different brands, but I think that there's a balance. Famously, there's a yin and yang to everything. I think also cheap parts beget a gateway drug, because sometimes you get that $20 that's burning a hole in your pocket. That's all you got. And you're like, I just want to buy something for my car, you know?
yeah. I mean,
And you can get a lot of cool things for $20 for your car.
Dave, I'm just going to tell you right now, right? Like, we're talking about the price versus performance and like how Sims fell off technically on pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Oil level gauge, they have 1 and 2 for, different models and stuff. It is 14,850 yen, right? How much do you think that is in US? It's clearly a plastic oil stick.
$50. I'm gonna reach $100. Let's say $100.
95.87.
Okay, it's $100.
I don't know what this dipstick does,
Does
but
it have their
man,
logo on it?
it
I
better
mean,
do my math homework.
I do have a super stick. Again, shameless, no plug, but just shout out to them, because they make as for anyone who's OCD like me, they make the best dipstick ever, because it guarantees that you get a proper oil reading, because there's a little plunger with a vent hole.
Uh-huh.
Look it up. I won't go into the details, but it is $100 dipstick. So I've spent
There you go.
$100 on a dipstick before. So if it has that, maybe it has some engineering behind it. Okay.
Yeah. But that's the thing,
And if
right?
they make them in 200 different colors, that's the other
We're
thing.
like, um, you're talking about like $100 dipstick in the US, right? This is $100
Yeah,
dipstick, and then you got to ship it. It's
that's
just
fair.
like, I think that that's where things kind of fall apart there. But
True. That's a very valid point. I mean, you're right. I forgot. I was thinking, yeah, no, you're right. That would be a very expensive dipstick. I guess if it was something that was very bespoke to a level of like originality and something. I mean, for fuck's sake, I just admitted I'm into watches, so that's a whole slippery slope right there in and of itself. Aesthetics are subjective and very expensive at times.
yeah. I had a list of a couple of their companies here. Cusco, Godspeed. Godspeed's a big one. I haven't heard a lot of their stuff in a while. They were originally early 2000s. Godspeed is
Cusco's
head of,
still around for me. We buy actually a lot of parts from them.
yeah, they're
We
around. Yep.
promote them very highly, but
Yeah.
you're right. They're in that dwindling category. I think they're struggling to maintain a market share in a sea of competitors. The one thing I can actually speak towards when it comes to Cusco is they make some fantastic products, and we are proud to support them because they are just the epitome of Japanese quality, to say the
Yeah.
least.
So
Like they're perfection.
the only reason I put them in there was because they used to be Subaru first. And to survive, right, they've expanded and they've gone to different platforms. And so now Subaru has taken kind of a back seat and is now in line with the other brands that they work on. So in that aspect, I think that they've just kind of pulled back a little on like their Subaru first mentality, and they're still putting that community, like, they're giving them the attention it deserves, but it's just not all about Subaru and making sure the Subaru community is happy. You know what I mean?
But I think that's not by intention. I think that is a pivot that I think a lot of companies are having to make. And that was something that was really predominant in the conversation, um, or is in the conversation of a lot of the industry right now, where we're all facing a crossroads, if you will.
Close this out. The last piece of this that I kind of wanted to circle back to is, we've been talking about Naziok this whole time. And the reason is why? Why is Naziok such an important piece of this? Why is Subaru Mechanics such an important piece of this? And the parts of this is vendor accountability. Vendor accountability is so key and is something that has kind of gone away, which is like kind of annoying because these vendors realized, like, something that happened to me when I was first, reaching out to sponsors and talking with people about the Super Mechanics group is there's a company I reached out to and they responded to me and they said, "We don't do Facebook groups." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, everybody has their own opinion." And right there, I knew that they don't do it because they don't like vendor accountability. They don't like that everybody has their opinion about a product, and they don't like how people talk about their product. And I think that it's wrong of companies to not do things like that, because if there are people that have their own opinions about your products, it's fine. You have to do the same thing like you do with reviews. You need to be able to, hey, sorry that you had a bad time with our product. How can we fix it? But nobody wants to do any customer service anymore. But like, that's how
Hmm.
you make customers. I remember when a company that I had a problem with, when I posted and saying that I had a bad experience, if they get in the comments and they say, "Hey man, what happened? Tell us about it." Boom, game changer. But they don't want to do that. So with Naziok, right, back in the day, vendor accountability, right? It had a long memory. If you searched up a certain part in Naziok, it was there in the forums with all the comments of people talking about it. There was no algorithm to bury the failures. There was nothing that you could pay to make all the bad stuff go away. It was just, it is what it is. And it was real world feedback. It was stuff that you knew what you were getting. You could go
Hmm.
online and you could find out exactly, it's like on Amazon now. The bad reviews are like pushed way down or hard to find, or they just don't want you to know what other people are saying about a product. And it's annoying because it's like, You deserve the right to know if a company is screwing other people, or if a company's putting out a good product, or what other people's experiences have been. It's 2025. We have the internet. We are a Subaru specific Facebook group about diagnosing Subarus, and we have 300,000 members in that group. It is unreal that you could find a product and not know how it went for other people who bought it. Unreal. And the fact that you have to dig for it and waste your time trying to find that is insane. I think that it's like
We've talked about it on one of the earlier podcasts about the cylinder 4 cooling mod. It was a whole episode. And it's like, go ahead, do a search, group search in the group, and you will find all the information, like you said, you need to make an informed decision.
dude, think about when people were scared of the Better Business Bureau. It kept people in line. It was so stupid because all it was this company that was like, we're gonna tell people that you're what you've done, and people were terrified of it. They're like, oh, I don't want to be taken off of the Better Business Bureau. I don't want people to know in the Better Business Bureau the shady deals that I've done. But now people are like, who cares? The Better Business Bureau could very well just like vanish tomorrow. Nobody would know. It's like, it's like crazy. And like it's come down to people policing these businesses themselves, but it's like such a hassle because you are going out of your way to like bash a company, and then they can just pay a fee to make that bashing go down somewhere where nobody will ever find it, and they can just bury
Not
it.
in, not in, not in the Subaru Mechanics group. You
You
can't
know
pay to
what's
make it go away.
um there was a time when Subaru parts had to survive Naziok, right? Before they survived the street and they got their products out, they had to survive the community. A lot of the best companies didn't disappear because they were bad. They disappeared because the market stopped
Agree.
rewarding that level of engineering and that level of product and that level of company. And
Or again, wrong place, wrong time, shipping costs. Like
yeah,
with the exhaust example, it's like they made fantastic products. The problem was, yeah, no one wants to buy a $200 exhaust and pay $700 for shipping.
yeah,
That was the landscape in the early days. And again, do your inflation numbers, math wizards in the comments, but like it was really bad. You know what I'm talking about.
yeah,
Shipping was not, you didn't get free 2-day prime. That was
yeah. And a lot of these people want the fast answer, right? The fast option. If I can't have it today, I want it tomorrow. If I can't have it tomorrow, I want it this week. If I can't have it this
mhm,
week, I don't want it. And you end up with these companies, right? Like we were just talking about, where are they at? Scooby Sport, right? Scooby Sport, small
mhm.
company. They make custom exhausts for you, right? They're not NVIDIA. They don't have 1,000 exhaust systems sitting in a warehouse. They don't have 10,000 headers waiting for you. They don't have
Cheap costs
another
of labor.
they don't have another shipment coming in next week. This is a company that you put an order in with, and they are going to look at your car and they are going to custom make a product for you, and it's going to be a good product. And you know what? People, this is the other thing. People need to be more tolerant because
Amen.
you have pushed good companies to deny your business because you didn't like how a weld didn't sit right or whatever. It happens. Mistakes happen, right? You're getting a handmade product that's custom for your car from a small business, and you're supporting them while they're making their journey to get where they want to be. And if a small crack shows up from Nvidia, which it probably will, I'm using
Amen.
them as a, an example, but
Target. It's okay.
company, any company, if you order and they have a billion products, you think that your product is going to be perfect every time? No, it's in a
Or they're
factory
going to give a
somewhere.
damn when something goes wrong. Like you said, they're
Yeah,
not going to give two shits.
yeah.
They're not.
And you know what? It's annoying too because some people I feel like are comfortable now with, well, if it's fucked up, they'll just send me a replacement, and they're okay with just cheap products, knowing that, hey, if I got to replace it, it is what it is. It's still cheaper than me going with the more expensive product. It breeds though this kind of problem, and where we've kind of landed.
Like I said, into a lack of innovation. You promote companies that don't really care about us, man. I mean, they're just a race to the bottom. They care about your dollar. They don't really care about you. And I think there was a time when we had, and we still do. I shouldn't say like we don't have any now, but they're few and far between. The companies that genuinely care about the product they put out, the work they put out, and the customers that they service. I know those are two paramount things that really resonate with me when I'm a consumer, because at the end of the day, I'm a consumer. We're all consumers in our daily lives. And famous, quote we always have to, cliche as it is, we have to vote with our dollars. We have to really stand behind these companies. And I mean, look at the STI. There's a reason why Subaru pulled it. If it was their top market leader and they were selling 100,000 of those a year, I don't think they would have got rid of it. Let me tell you, we're responsible, man. I mean, again, simply put, like everyone who cries about the death of the STI, do you own one? When was and you're like, oh, well, I own an STI. Okay, cool. What year? Oh, I got an '07. I mean, beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I love it. My favorite year. But would you buy a new one? No. That's the problem for Subaru.
Yeah.
They have to keep selling them. I mean, logistic. Subaru was really keen. I think you said it best on putting their ear to the ground. I think Boxer Fest was a very prime example of that for both of us to see, all the investment they put into that event. They really wanted to hear what the people wanted to see.
Yeah.
And I think between Project Midnight and the Yellows, all these things like that Subaru has been putting out is saying, we hear you, enthusiasts. I think that reciprocatedly, we need to let them hear us too.
Yeah.
We need to speak back as enthusiasts. We need to go, yes, I will buy this.
I think that this community really needs to come to terms with the fact that we were getting better quality products as soon as 10 years ago. Like, the fact of the matter is that you deserve better quality products for your Subaru, and this is a car that deserves the best. And look at Porsche, dude. Porsche is a boxer. They make great cars. They make track focused vehicles, and the companies that make parts for Porsche, they know what they're making parts for. They know that these Porsche people are not gonna, they're gonna raise hell if they get a part that doesn't work right on their Porsche. They're gonna raise hell if they get an aftermarket radiator and the weld is cracking, right? They are gonna raise hell about everything and anything because it is $100,000 plus vehicle and these parts are not right. Full stop. That is something that brings.
The bar has been elevated, and you know what? There's less of a playing ground. You know what? The people that are making performance exhaust for Porsche aren't competing with 50 other companies.
Yeah.
And dude, they know they're not even going to compete with China, because how dare you put a Chinese exhaust on that?
Yeah.
Or on your Ferrari, extreme example. Like,
dude, it's the
is
pedigree.
there any Chinese company saying we have the best? Actually, I'm sorry to say this. This is the weird, not embarrassment to any company, but I'll say this. Last year, not this current year, but unfortunately, we couldn't make it due to the logistics. Last year at SEMA, we saw probably 24 companies selling custom titanium exhausts for Lamborghinis. And these were Chinese companies, all of them. I think the cheapest one I saw was about $2,000, give or take. Full exhaust system, including exhaust manifolds, everything for a Lamborghini. Full exhaust kit, I think it was about $2,200.
That's crazy.
China is coming for Lambo, but unbelievable to my point, I did not see a single Ferrari exhaust.
Yep.
From a single Chinese company. I think, like you said, they know we'd make this product. We'd kill it. We'd be cheaper by 1,000 times. I'll go extreme. 10,000 times cheaper than what Ferrari or any Ferrari aftermarket company is selling a Ferrari exhaust for.
Yep.
Cheapest one, $8,000. We could sell one for $85. No one would buy it. No one would dare put it $80 or $800 exhaust on their Ferrari. Nobody.
And that's where we've talked about before. Subarus are in this tough market. They ride the line of a cheap sports car and a high-end vehicle. Subaru's inching in on selling a $50,000 car. And the people,
and part of that is the market shift. So maybe you're right, and like Subaru needs to divulge and have here's my unpopular take. Maybe it's not so much Subaru needs to have a luxury brand, but Subaru needs to go, we're gonna have a cheap brand.
Yeah. Like,
And that could move Subaru up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Not saying Subaru's the luxury brand, but Subaru basically does what Toyota did with Scion. They said, we're going to make a cheaper version of Toyota.
yeah,
Think about that.
yeah, it's crazy. And
And now all of a sudden, I'm sorry, but maybe the Impreza goes down there. And maybe the Crosstrek, I'm sorry, maybe goes down to a new brand.
dude, the Forester would be a submodel brand. You know what I mean? Like the Forester would not be like, you know, it's been around for a long time, but I feel like you're right. I think that there's certain models that just need to split the brand, and I feel like I said, Subarus are inching in on the $50,000 mark, and you're going to end up with a split customer base. You have the guys who are used to the beater Subarus and getting them
You can
super
buy an
cheap,
entry
and
level Ford F
you
one
know,
fifty, $50,000.
yeah. But like, so like, you know, let me put it this way: $50,000, you could go get a Supra, you know? And you really think that Supra owners with their BMW engine are gonna suffice for shitty parts? No. And that's the thing, is like, we're so used to competing with Evos and Eclipses and all of these car brands that we're so used
But the
to
market
crap.
was
Like,
different then.
it was different and the cars were different. And now Subaru's elevating itself. It wants the cars to be on the same plane as, let's say, a Supra. And guess what?
Thinks I think what Subaru basically relegates itself is to, and maybe we're making a premonition right now about where Subaru goes, and they have a spin-off brand, and they take a lot of their cars, I hate to say it, but a lot of their models, and they move them down. They bring the price point down, they move them down to a subsidiary brand, and what that enables them to do is take the Trail Seeker and the Solterra and the Ascent and all these other more kind of premium options and bigger vehicles and go, yep, the Ascent is now $60,000 and we're going to compete with, oh, not even compete. We're better than a Telluride. We're going to be, I mean, for anyone who followed the social medias of the unfortunate, ironic turn of events of the Subaru Tele or the Kia Telluride getting stuck in Telluride off-roading. It was just like poetic justice of it's not a Subaru, bro. But
You know, Dave,
yeah, maybe Subaru has to basically strip it down.
what about this? What if Subaru splits the company EV and gas?
Kind of what I'm predicting. I think that Subaru is going to become EV, and I think they're going to create a sub brand for gas. And I don't know where. Again, that's the interesting part about like, hey, maybe this is a premonition of why Subaru teased the STI as a gas option and an EV option. The STI is the premium option in gas of a Subaru or their
Well,
subsidiary brand of gas.
so
And then it's the entry level version of their electric version of Subaru.
so I'm just thinking like because what we keep talking about is Subaru, right? Being like everybody else, where they either have to have a performance brand or they have to have a sub brand, and it's only up or down, right? But what if they just equal parties? What if they just have electric versions of their gas vehicles? And if
Well,
you
and
like, you know,
that's a good
like,
point. That's similar to kind of what I guess what Toyota kind of did in some capacity. Yeah. I mean, they didn't really, they were cheaper, yes, but they basically just pulled a lot of bells and whistles, you know?
yeah, but I'm saying, like,
Scions were cheap.
What if Subaru just has their gas versions and their EV versions? And if you like the WRX, but you want an electric one, we have that. If you like the Forester and you want an electric one, we have that. You know, it's like, I think that, like,
Yeah.
you start to inch in on, like, maybe they just rename the electric side of the business or something, or make it like Subaru EV and Subaru, you know, or something like that. Like, you
That's
know,
interesting. That's an interesting good take.
so
I think that's in the cards, but I think we're both aligned with thinking the same kind of thought that maybe Subaru is ripe for, and you've said it for the last 2-3 podcasts now, and you're not wrong. I guess maybe you're just bringing me onto your side now. You swayed me, Pat, about, yeah, it's getting to that point where less they need to go, you know, and that's where I would I kind of resisted going thinking, oh, Subaru is going to create just a Subaru luxury brand. I'm like, well, what are they going to build? Like, what are they going to compete with? Lexus? Like, I mean, BMW? Like, I just don't know. if they
Yeah.
have that in the cards. I mean, even look at what Hyundai has done with the Genesis like line. Like they're fitting to go F1 racing here soon. If you haven't followed it, it's
Yep.
I mean, pardon my French, when I say this is not a censored podcast, but about to get real with
Yeah.
Hyundai.
Yeah.
Hyundai's not
Yeah.
around.
Yep.
And it's safe to say that I don't think Subaru's looking at it going, no, that's not where we want. No, we're not going to Formula One. That's far from their category and demographic. I mean, point in case, look at what their big investment recently was with the recent Gymkhana, which was just again
Yeah.
through the roof. I had an argument with someone the other day, not at, but kind of I call it the classic bar argument, and they were like, "No, he just skidded across that stream," and I go, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I saw the clip. They just danced across it." I'm like, no, he hydroplaned the whole thing. He's like, no, it wasn't a hydroplane. I'm like, excuse me, did you see the end? Did you see the whole video? He goes, no, I just saw the clip. I go, and I watched it like 5 times. He was clearly dancing on across rocks. And I go, no. And I showed him the end, which we watched. It was like, no, that car could have sank. They could have lost a lot of their budget right there and there. And when you see the final, he goes, oh my God, you were right. That wasn't
Yeah.
a stream. And I was like, no, it wasn't a little like meandering stream.
Yeah.
Very different context. I think that we have to be real about how we're analyzing things, I guess.
Yeah. Something, just to close this out as we're talking about this. Again, I just want to reiterate, don't be afraid to police these companies.
Yes.
Don't let companies get away with 3D printing crappy products, Like 3D printing is not the solution to everything. And it has come a long way from the original products that were coming out that were really bad and would break instantly. But like, if they are just making cheap products that are going to break and then need to be replaced very frequently, and that's their answer, it's not an answer. Our sponsor, Company 23 and Cartboy, are like the perfect ideal company to base this whole thing off of.
They're
They
the epitome of it. They
they
really get it.
they over engineer, they listen to the community. If you make a post about a problem with a product, Mark is in the comments immediately. He's fixing the problem. He wants to know what went wrong. They want to know and they want to fix it. And it's like the customer service is like insane. It's through the roof. And like that's how every company should be. Like
Yes.
Boxer Fest has 8,000 people that go to it every year. And there are like, what, 8 or 9 of these events that go on throughout the United States. Like, that's a lot of Subaru owners that are buying a lot of product. And it is just insane to me that you would go and just like what I call magic beans. You're just chancing it on like these products that are coming from places unknown, from businesses that you're already sketched out dealing with. You're 3D printing all the cheap stuff. Like, it's a good outlet, but like just they just have to make sure they're making the right products and they're doing it the right ways. And if they're not, let them know. And like that's the thing. We grew up with like dealing with like 5 companies because those were the only companies that could survive. Because the rest of them were policed by Naziok and they could never survive. And now it just feels like nobody's policing them, and now there's a billion companies and you just never know what you're getting.
Well,
So
and shout out again to Company 23 because in the early days there was 2 things that come to mind. One of which is how there was a moment where we posted a picture, very proudly of just kind of our, one of our new tool displays, or for the shop. It was not tool display, I should say, but like setups with some really nice pegboard, like, hey, here's how the text, our engine build room, it's all set up and all the Company 23 tools. Mark sent me a private message, just not in a bad way. He's like, hey, I noticed that one tool in the far left end isn't ours. And I was like, dude, I'm so my bad. I didn't even think about it when I posted it. I was like, bro, my bad. Like I that's the one tool I bought on Amazon. Like you don't make that one tool. Like sincerely, like it was one of those. And he goes, "Hello, that's one of the tools we're working on right now. Like we're re-engineering it. I'd love to send you, the updated version, like of it." And I was like, awesome. I was like, I insist on paying for it just because, again, I'm humble and I'm modest. I want to support what they're doing. So I bought it. Full retail value. I bought it. Beyond, like you said, engineered. This original tool was like this. Let's say two little yokes, where it grabbed like this. I guess best way for anyone who's watching. And the problem was I'd already been through two of them where they would basically bend outwards like this. And Mark just said, you know what? I'm looping the top. He put a bridge on it. Fixed
That's
it.
great. Yep.
Fixed it. So I have his, and I humbly threw the alternative option away. But I think the other side is understanding that what Company 2023 has done is when I first got into starting my shop modestly back in 2018, I was very cognizant of wanting to make sure I have all of the proper equipment, tooling that we need to do whatever we need to do. And I was very quick to realize that the alternative, as we've talked with Mark about, the alternative was, no exaggeration, tens of thousands of dollars in tools, which to my original or my first point were far inferior to Company 23's tools. And I was very fortunate to find them and realize that they are the pinnacle of Subaru tools.
Yeah.
I'll just say it. That is the one hill I'll die on. They make the pinnacle of the best tools for Subarus. They're not only better, they're exceptionally cheaper, and I hate to use that word, than the manufacturer's option. The
Yep.
manufacturer's Subaru option, more oftentimes than not, I've looked it up, in a TSB or something, or a procedure, and it's like, that thing looks like it sucks. And sure enough, 9 times out of 10, Company 23 already has an option that is leagues better. Because,
Yeah.
again, talk about, like I said earlier, they're enthusiasts. They've been there. They've done that. They work on these cars. They own these cars. They understand what it's like to work on these cars. Like, talk about a perfect alignment of a sponsor for this group, because they understand what the needs of the mechanics are.
Yeah.
And I think that anytime you have a company like that, we owe it to them. I'll say that we owe it to them to support them and appreciate that we have a company like that that is committed to us as the community.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that a lot of these companies are doing the right things, but we're just trying to police the ones that aren't. And I think that that's really the the
Important.
thing that the thing that is important. And it all comes down to like I was saying, like Boxer Fest. Any company can pay to be a Boxer Fest sponsor and get on a t-shirt and put up a stand and sell their products. But it's up to us to if a company shows up and has a bad product, to let Boxer Fest know that they should not be allowed there and that they are not somebody that we agree with and what they put out for our cars. And it doesn't matter how much they're paying. I don't care if they pay them 10 grand to be there. If you are not a good company and you are not standing behind your products and you're not doing the right things, then you shouldn't be
And
allowed
not
in the
supporting the
community.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, get
So,
out. We don't want you. I mean, we have to weed these people out, like you said.
well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I think that Dave and I have gotten very heated on this one, I think. Because it's just annoying. It's annoying and we deal with it every day,
Close
working
to
in a
home, man.
both of us working in a shop know what it's like when a product shows up and it's already broken in a box. It's just stuff like that happens, and sometimes it's a one-off and sometimes it's just the company and it just happens that way because
Sometimes it's shipping.
they just can't. Yeah, that too. But
No
you know
one's fault but
we
the shipping.
yeah, we appreciate you guys. I saw the comment on last episode about wagon mafia. I know I don't know the difference between a wagon and a hatchback. I'm sorry. You guys can hate me all you want.
It's all about the size of the ass, Pat, man. It's all about the
I
size of
know.
the ass.
They're just interchangeable in my brain. But we appreciate you guys. Definitely follow us, please. Every view, every follow, everything that you guys do really helps us. And
Means the world.
we're we really didn't get a full year in of the podcast this year, and our Wrapped was great and showed how many of you are really following us. We did post that on our socials on Facebook and Instagram. We hope that this year will be even better, and Dave and I have so much planned for you guys, and
Big
you know,
plans.
we're gonna talk next episode about Bonfire Alley and the history of it because Dave and I are gonna be there this year. And that's gonna be a really cool episode to dive in on. So stick around and we'll see you guys on the next one.